Thank you, everyone, for joining us again today. For those who joined us yesterday, we appreciate it so much for coming back today. Yesterday, we discussed the topic of food insecurity due to the COVID-19, and so many of you contributed to the conversation. It was so engaging, and the speakers also shared their wealth of knowledge, and we appreciate them so much. And for those of you who were not here yesterday, we will also make sure you receive the recording. So today, we're going to be looking at the impact. We're still talking about the impact of the COVID-19. We're looking at the myths, we're looking at the impact and the way forward. And the purpose of this meeting is for you to gain a better understanding of the COVID-19 situation in Africa. And we also will be sharing helpful tips, which will be beneficial to you and to people around you during this crisis. And so I have to tell you that, let me tell you a bit about the background. The COVID-19 disease has spread all over the world. So why the virus did not, immediately reach the African nations, it has in recent weeks been causing distress in Africa. And there are now more than 17,000 cases of COVID-19 in Africa, with almost 1,000 deaths. So my organization, Rise and Lead, we were supposed to have our summit for the first time in Lagos on the 29th of March, but due to the lockdown, we couldn't come in. I was supposed to fly in with one of our speakers who is here, two of our speakers here from the Netherlands, but we couldn't fly in, So I know that some way or the other, COVID-19 pandemic has affected each and every one of us. So we decided as an organization to bring the community together, to start having conversations on how to survive during this period, on how to thrive even beyond this period, what we can get out of this period, so that we can all together find solutions to helping each other and helping our governments. So today we are discussing the impact of COVID-19 on information management, digital security, and their relation to our mental health. And later today at 4 p.m. Nigerian time, we will be looking at how to manage our career and businesses during this crisis. So my name is Ebere Kadiri, and I am the CEO of Ataro Foods in Netherlands. And I'm also the founder of Rise and Lead Women, a leadership organization located in Europe and in Africa. So with me today is Charles Otudo.
Good morning.
Charles is here, yeah. So Charles.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, good morning.
Welcome, Charles. Charles is the brand and marketing consultant for Rise and Lead Africa, and he is also the principal partner Astral BMC Limited in Lagos. He's going to be my co-host for the virtual roundtable today. We are also joined by Jane Ekarton Idehen. Sorry if I didn't pronounce it well. So, Jane is the country manager of Avanti Communications Limited.
Hi, Jane. Good morning.
Hi, Charles. Hi, everyone. And I'm happy to be here.
Pleasure's mine too. I'm glad to be here too.
Thank you. And we're also joined by Yemi Kerry, the CEO of Hakabella Limited. Is it Yemi?
That's right. Yes.
Good morning,
everybody.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the webinar.
Okay, let me put it like this. And we are joined by Barbara Piper.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Barbara.
Barbara
Welcome.
is a compassionate coach, and she was supposed to come to Lagos for the first time, and she had her tickets. She's still looking forward to coming to meeting everyone. Wow. And here we have Anita the Word.
Morning.
Good morning, Anita. Welcome aboard.
So Anita is the head of marketing and business development Africa in Maersk.
Okay.
She is Dutch, but she lives in Lagos, and I tell you, she loves Nigeria so much.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an amazing place.
Wow.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome.
So before we continue and I introduce the speakers and get everybody talking, I want to let you know that there is a chat box there's a chat box right below the your screen. So please introduce yourself. Where are you coming from? You know, which country, and what is your name? So when you are typing, please make sure you select to the panelists and to all participants so that you can be interacting among yourselves and networking and maybe even connect afterwards. So it's important to make sure you're sending your message and you're selecting to all participants and the panelists. Okay. Another thing I wanted to ask you is, you know, what do you know about the COVID-19? What are the lies you have heard being spread about COVID-19? Does the spread of coronavirus or the isolation caused by the lockdown make you feel anxious? So today I have like a voting button that I'm going to display now. And I'm going to just display the polling. Let's see. I don't know if you can see this. If you can see it, it says on the scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how anxious are you? Whether due to the COVID-19 or the isolation or the anxiety and fear of, are we going to be here for another 2 weeks? How anxious are you? So just, we're going to collect the answers to see everybody's energy and temperature where you are now. So let me see. So this is a good 12% are really very anxious. 15% of the participants are anxious, you know, and we have at least 5% who are not too anxious. I mean, congratulations and well done. And thank you for joining us. We just wanted to make sure we are having a conversation. To be honest, and according to data from the World Health Organization, mental illness accounts for 30% of all non-fatal diseases and 10% of total fatal diseases burden in the world, which means the situation we are faced today is a stressful situation for everyone. And it is normal to be anxious and worried. It is so normal. Because the problem is, our discussion today is all about how is technology helping or hurting us during this pandemic? What kind of information are we sharing? And some of this anxiety is coming from the information that is being circulated and shared. Where should we get our information from? Because if we get the right information and we have the right answers, we're not going to be so afraid anymore. Also, sorry, excuse me. How can we ensure that people in rural communities get the needed information they need to survive and thrive during this pandemic? How can you use technology in the right way, even beyond pandemic? Could also the pandemic to be a blessing so that Africa can really become more technology savvy? You know, while using technology, how can we protect ourselves from misinformation and also from being hacked? So many of us, our passwords are being used every day. And another reason why this topic today is very important to address is because information security, there are many myths around COVID-19, and we want to address them so you can be better informed informed and also use the information to protect your loved ones. Also, cyber attacks are on the rise. Due to the social distancing, we are now forced to rely on digital tools, and this exposes us to the risk of being hacked. Cyber criminals are finding new ways to exploit users and technology to access our passwords. Recently, my brother's passwords was hacked and they came to our group chat and they were sending so many things to take everybody's information. And the reason these people are succeeding is because of the fears that are being spread. So because of those fears, we want to check the internet and then we click on the wrong thing because we are looking for answers. So today we're going to be discussing some of these myths. For us, we have heard a lot of myths, There are myths about 5G network, how it's spreading the COVID-19, and we want to talk about that today. Some people say if you expose yourself to the sun, temperature higher than 5 degrees, you will be well. Some people said catching COVID-19 means you will die or have it for life. All of these things, we want to address them. Some other people said only old people will catch it and die. Some people said chloroquine, antibiotics, and also young people are not getting COVID-19. So let's discuss this today, and I'm now going to bring on our speakers, and I'm going to tell you more about who they are first, and I will ask them some general questions. Then I'll hand over to the moderator, Mr. Charles, to ask specific questions relating to their own fields. So I'm going to start with Jane. So Jane, please, can you tell us, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected you and your industry? And can you tell us a bit about how your organization or you, what you're doing to support people during this crisis? Can we have Jane on board?
We can't hear you, Jane.
Also, I was muted. I was muted.
Okay.
So, everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're calling in from or you're logging in from. So I'm in the tech industry. I run the operations for a satellite communication firm in West Africa. So of course, personally affecting me is a different story. I tell people I'm now the teacher, I'm the mother, the cleaner, the cook, like every other activity I could have outsourced, I now do. Because personally we are now at home, we're working from home. So I'm taking on things I probably wouldn't do. Like I normally wouldn't homeschool my kids, but now I do that because everything is online. But in terms of the industry, it's slightly different, So initially we saw a huge uptake because a lot of activities moved online because people had to work from home. We're doing social distancing. So we saw a spike in the use of data. So in terms of the tech industry, there's a lot of activity going. We are being forced to, like the satellite industry, bring up sites as quickly as we can because the consumption of data just spiked in folds, not just 100 times what we see, and not just in Nigeria, actually globally. So we're helping countries bring up links as fast as we could because of the rate they're consuming data. But we're also beginning to see some kind of a reduction in that growth. It could also be with the extended stay at home. A lot of informal jobs are not economically, people are being affected. So disposable income is going down. So people that could have afforded to buy those all-time recharges, and as people start to work from home and others start to lose their jobs, so they're not spending as much as they would. So that's what we're seeing after about 3-4 weeks. We see that growth kind of flattening. So that's another of the next wave we are seeing. And we think they'll be also spending for a while until people are clear where this is. But how are we helping? So at Advantage, because we're a satellite company, and that's what we do, we actually provide access. We provide wireless broadband using the satellite. we're not working with more just than companies, but actually governments. Like we're working with the South African government. We're helping governments to provide data access in very remote areas, either for their healthcare workers or even they're trying to make access for schools or communities so that they can reach them and those communities can also access their government. We're also seeing a lot of demand from our clients. So we have clients that are carriers, carriers like like MTN, AT&T, and all that, because they are also consuming more data. They're requiring us to provide data in areas they didn't have data formerly. So it's an interesting take on it. Depending on which side of the industry you sit on, you see a growth, or in some sectors there's been a decline as well.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Jen, when you for the next one, you need to speak a little louder so more people can hear you. Okay, thank you so much. And also now to Yemi. Yemi, I'd like to ask you the same questions. How has this COVID-19 affected you, your business or your industry? And what are you doing to support people during this period?
Okay, thank you. I run a digital transformation company. And so in terms of the effect on me personally, it has allowed me to, sort of calm down. The anxiety level in the beginning has reduced. I have been able to put myself in a routine. So I wake up like a normal day, and then after I do my early chores, I come to my desk and I sit down from 10 to 5, just to put me in perspective. And because I run an organization, I have a responsibility to my employees. Some of them are fretting, some of them are thinking that it's a leisure time, and some of them really are anxious. And so we have to communicate all the time with them, make sure I give them tasks and things like that. And because I am not there to manage physically, I am beginning to discern the different types of employees I have from afar. In terms of the industry, now, this is quite interesting. Like Jane said, the tech industry has seen some sort of surge. People are beginning to use a lot of data. The data used for the COVID itself, the governments are looking at data and trying to mine data as fast as possible to enable them taking insightful decisions. We have about 93% of the world's the people that live in the world that have imposed travel bans, and because of that, supply chain are using data. Telecoms from what Jane said, they're going to the rural areas. They need to be able to share the network traffic. They use data for that. So a lot of industries are now being affected, and the advent of technology is now being used more in terms of education. For instance, schools are going online. Collaboration tools, a lot of webinars. You find out that you have back-to-back meetings now. People can no longer dodge and say they're in traffic, things like that. And there's an increase, because of this, there's an increase in the strain on infrastructure. Infrastructure in terms of, first of all, the devices and hardware. People had to quickly send computers to their employees at home and buy. And because of the international logistics restrictions, the cost of these devices are escalating. Remote access in terms of bandwidth. The bandwidth, there's a strain on bandwidth now globally, and so they have to try and share the traffic of bandwidth. And of course, the businesses are now using new technology to enable changing their business models, online meetings, business meetings, trying to see how they can get their clients and their customers and their vendors on a virtual on a virtual model of earning. And the one that is affecting us, like Ebere had said, is the cyber attacks. There's a lot of that going on, and a lot of the security teams are supposed to be really at alert and be able to be a step ahead of the hackers. These are the things that are affecting the industry.
Thank you so much, Kerry. And now we go to Anita. Anita, can you also briefly tell us how this COVID-19 pandemic has affected you as an individual, your industry, the logistics industry? Please also introduce yourself briefly and tell us what your company is doing. I know they're still working at this time. You know, what are you doing to support people in Nigeria, in Africa, everywhere you're located?
Oh, those are many questions in one.
I know.
I try to answer most of them.
Yeah.
So to start off with the industry. So I work for Maersk. Maersk is the largest container and logistics company in the world. So you can imagine what all the downturn in trade has done. It affects our business very, very much. And especially because we are a global business. So if it starts off being bad in China, so it meant no sailings or reduced sailings rather from China to the rest of the world. Then of course it came to Europe. Then you see that also the trade gets then affected in Europe. So stuff can't go out, stuff can't come in. And now it moves to the US, and also Africa is affected. There is still trade going on, thank God. There is still the opportunity of sending goods. The problem is more in the production of the goods. But you know, where possible, trade is happening, and we are operating. I think that's very important to know, that we are still operating as a company. What do? We help our people internally with a lot of information. So we have daily messaging on our internal tools, which is Yammer, which is our website, where we give people information about COVID, how it is affected, and what we do about it. The same we do for our customers. We have also almost daily messages to them to explain to them what's happening, what's going on. What is very interesting to see in all this, yes, also, you know, the bad things of, you know, the cyber attacks and everything, the bandwidth, but it's beautiful to see the kind of creativity and innovations that are happening as well. I think the whole digitalization is going very fast. If you look at it in trade, you have a lot of, especially in Africa, we still have places where there's still a lot of documents that are moving around physically. And we see that there's now an opportunity to move more of that digitally. So that I think is a very exciting movement. Also, the fact that it now proves that people can work from home. I think in Africa, if I compare to Europe or the US, where it was more common and acceptable to work 1 or 2 days from home.
She's muted. She's muted.
Oops. Yeah, sorry. I touched the screen because it went down. So where in Africa, people tended to be feeling the need to be in the office every day, because that was like, okay, if I see you, I know you work. And now with the lockdowns, people have to work from home, and it opens up, you know, the acceptance of a different way of working, which I also think is very exciting and very creative how people deal with that. Then personally, yeah, it affected me personally quite a bit. because, as you mentioned, Ibera, I am originally from the Netherlands. I lived in Africa for a big part of my life, Kenya, South Africa. But the organization gave us the opportunity when all this started early March, if you wanted to go back to your home base. And we have 3 children, and as much as they are grown-ups, I think what is important during this time is that you're together as a family. And we opted then to come to the Netherlands, and you know, we've been over a month now in a rented apartment, and I can't wait actually to go back to Nigeria and, you know, to feel the buzz and to see the people around there. I was very happy being in Nigeria, and of course I'm happy being in the Netherlands, but yeah, for me Africa is home, so I want to go back home for real. So it has affected me personally in that sense quite a bit. I was very anxious the first weeks because you don't know, there's all these question marks. What's happening, what's going on? My parents are still alive, they're in their 80s. So it's also like, okay, how do we deal with them? They've been digitalized very quickly as well. My mom knows how to FaceTime and she's happy to do that daily. So yeah, it's a big impact. I'm in a better space now. I can see ahead again. I can see the opportunities that are there, and I feel in a better place.
Thank you so much, Anita, for that contribution. So we now move over to Barbara Piper. Barbara was supposed to come with me to Lagos, and it's good that you're seeing her because she's still coming. I've told her a lot of beautiful things about Nigeria, so she's really hoping to come. So Barbara, tell us, how has this COVID-19 pandemic affected you, your business? And I already know what you're doing here in the Netherlands, but share that with us as well.
Okay, thank you, Iberi and Adebola, for inviting me to this webinar. It's wonderful to be here, and I was in the webinar yesterday, and it's amazing how much you can learn about a country in 1 hour. It's a delight to be part of it. So my name is Barbara Piper, and I work as a Compassion Ambassador, and I'm still in training in California at Stanford, and so Compassion is really my middle name. And meaningful communication is at the heart of everything that I do. So I guess when I think of how this has affected us, personally, I feel I've traveled all over the world with my husband and my children. And so I know it takes a long time to adjust to the situation. So to what Anita was just saying, it takes a few weeks, days before you can recalibrate and get a new balance in yourself before you can even look at your direct environment and then the people around you further up, and then look at it from a country perspective and then look from a worldwide perspective. I think those are the 4 ways I've been trying to look at it. And personally, I have 2 young children, and so they're looking at me as to how I respond to what's happening. How do I respond to the news? How do I respond to fake news? How do I respond in the middle of my own fear? And so what I found is that the calmer I am, the calmer my kids are. So yes. I think that's my most direct experience with fear and a compassionate approach. I think it's a compassionate approach. If I look at my work, it's more relevant than ever. I think sometimes people would question me, what do you do as a compassion ambassador? How do you bring compassion into your life? What does that mean? How relevant is a coach in my daily life, in all the busyness? And now suddenly people are at home, they're alone, they're lonely, and they're having to fall back onto their own resilience. And I can't remember who said it, maybe, well, one of the speakers said, I needed to find a new routine. So habits and routines is what builds resilience, knowing how you're feeling and knowing your own responses to situations. helps to bring calm into your life. And then when you're calm, you can be calm for everyone else around you and spread it. So in terms of my own work, it's become very relevant. And to be honest, in the first 3 weeks, I just overworked myself because what I'm teaching is needed. So I had to find a way to find my own balance again and make sure I stuck to my own routines and positive habits instead of watching the news all the time and hearing the latest and getting all worked up about everything. So I also run an academy and have a responsibility to clients and to colleagues. And there I find switching everything around to an online environment also brings challenges because yes, we're all happy we don't have travel time and we're in our homes. And at the same time, we're back to back from 8 to 8 behind our computer, which is so unhealthy. And it's so, it doesn't make you resilient to be behind your computer 10 hours a day. And that brings us back to how am I going to respond? You know, I always say we're response able. I'm able to respond, but that brings a responsibility as well for myself and for the people around me. So if I'm not taking good care of myself, how can I take care of someone else? So I'm seeing in my business, but also in the coaching business around me, and all the training work, that on the one hand, we have so many people who are anxious, alone, fearful. You know, I have so many more clients than I had before. It's really busy. But on the other hand, because we are finding that we're getting used to the new situation, and I guess in sort of a sped up way, suddenly we have to respond more quickly than ever and take good care of ourselves. So we're also seeing all these initiatives of people in the community taking care of each other. And I find that heartwarming, and it brings a smile to my face. So many people are doing so many good things for one another. And some of it's free and some of it's paid and some of it's reduced, and it doesn't really matter. What matters is the world's never going to be the same.
Yes.
It's affecting all of us, no matter where we live, what our religion is, what our race is, our gender. It's affecting us all in the same way. And so I guess in all, our hearts are being broken with everything that's going on, people dying, people working 7 days a week to take care of our ill people. And on the other hand, our hearts are being broken open to really serve each other in a new way. So I think that's helping me. The extremes and the polarities are also helping me respond and helping others respond to what's going on in my industry.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Barbara. Yeah, we're still coming back to you. And before I hand over to Mr. Charles Otudo, who is going to moderate today's panel, I want everyone to tell me, what do you think about the myth of called 5G, right? The 5G myth going on in Nigeria. You know, in Nigeria, so many people use this WhatsApp application in their groups. I've seen a lot of people quarrel, fights, you know, a lot of division regarding that opinion. So before the speakers start talking about it, I want everybody use 1 minute just to tell us your opinion about the relationship between 5G and COVID-19. What do you think? Is it true or is it false? Let's just get the conversation rolling. And while you're doing that, the one question I want to ask before I hand over to Mr. Charles is, yesterday, during our yesterday's section, so many people talked about, asked this question: how are we making sure that no one is left out? So many of us have parents at home in the villages. So we have people in our rural communities, and the government is distributing food, government is distributing money. Some of these people have no clue or idea how these things are being shared. So my question to all the panelists is, what do you think our government can do in terms of using technology that is available in Nigeria and Africa? Because we have so many people joining us from different countries today. So I don't want to be saying only Nigeria. We have people from South Africa, from even somebody woke up at 5 a.m. to join us from the US. people from Canada, so many people. So just be specific around Africa. What do you think our government can do to disseminate information to everyone? And also, what do you think we as individuals can do? Anita has already said her parents can now FaceTime because they have what it takes, okay? In some cases, in parts of Africa, we don't have electricity, for example. We don't have data. How else can we make sure that this information we are sharing gets to the grassroots? So can we start? Who wants to start with that, with the answer? I want all the speakers to please contribute to this discussion. What do you think the government can do, individuals can do to make sure every information we shared regarding the truth about COVID, regarding what to do, and also regarding all the things COVID relief that is being shared? How can we make sure, using information technology, that everybody is included and not left out? Maybe we can start with Jane.
Okay, I hope you can hear me now. I hope it's
better. Can hear you.
Okay, that's an interesting question, because for Africa, I think one of the biggest challenge has been the digital divide. I think we kept talking about it. Now, most of us here, we have access to this webinar because we have internet access. And most of us are reading a lot about what is going on because we have access to the internet and access to the information. People in the rural areas don't have this access, and that is so vulnerable because, first of all, we can't get the right information to them, and we can also support them. So one of the big takeouts will be the actual requirement to make sure we bridge that gap. That is one big takeout from all that is happening. But what we can also do is use the existing media we have. So we still can, push information using existing media, like the radio. Because definitely we have probably high illiteracy rates in those rural areas. So I wouldn't say sending them emails will work, because they probably don't have access to the internet, they don't have emails, and they probably can't read. But we can use existing media like local radio stations, local TV stations, make sure the content can be consumed. So it will be used in local languages so people understand what we're talking about. So I've been impressed with some of the things I've seen on social media, but I think more importantly, we would need to have them distributed in the form where they can consume it, like using local TVs and local radios, where we know the people in the rural areas can have. We can use existing leadership in those rural areas. We really need to educate them. If we can educate the community leaders, we're closer to educating the people in those communities. They should know what it is to prevent. What are the preventive measures? All the washing your hands, social isolation. We need people that are trusted to push that information to those communities so they understand the importance of taking precaution. Coming to the one about distributing the relief package, that is the tricky one, I tell you. Because we know that distribution requires some form of identification. We have a big gap there. I see a lot of people write, why don't we use the BVN and distribute money? Half the people in the rural areas don't have BVN. If you say mobile money makes sense because they transact using mobile money, that means we need governments to partner with the private sector, like the mobile carriers that have more reach. Actually, so they have more reach and they have a way to identify people, but there's still a huge part of them that's not identified. We almost have about 40% of the population still not using communication services. So how do you bridge that gap? So that's not an easy solution, but we can take the steps we can. We can partner with the private sector like the mobile carriers and see if we can reach. Using mobile money, we can address some of these concerns. It could be giving them access to small loans or giving them access to funds. But in terms of distributing physical foodstuff and all that, I think we have to use the existing channels, because those are probably the closest to the trusted channels we have, which is community leaders, and find a way to also make sure that it's enforced, that the goods get to the actual rightful owners. So that's my.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's like you've covered all the, you've given us all the answers. that is necessary. Does anyone want to contribute, or can we move to the questions that we have for today? Let's move straight. So, Mr. Charles, I'm now handing over to you. Yes.
Sorry, I thank you, Jane. It's indeed a very comprehensive answer. I think what is important as well is to look at the culture of countries, right? Because what we have done now in the world is a little bit, we've taken all the solutions and we've implemented them regardless of looking at, sorry, the culture of a country. And I think where there is a big opportunity in Nigeria, if we look at pastors, religious leaders who have an important role in society, people tend to trust the word of the pastor. And I think there the government could make more use of them as a platform, working together and making sure that the message is in such a way that it is comprehensible. If I can take an example of Indonesia, where you also have a lot of illiterate people, a lot of rural people. Now, what the culture in Indonesia is that people are, for example, very scared of ghosts. And so what they have done is they have called COVID-19 a ghost. And the police patrolling is a ghost patrol. And that seems to work because that is a part of the culture in Indonesia that people can comprehend. And if you look at it, then, you know, it is more easier to digest and people will listen. And I think that is just an opportunity that is not taken into account enough right now.
Can I just say something? It seems that we are underestimating the level of poverty in this country, particularly in Nigeria, in the African continent. You know, COVID is known to them in the rural areas, basically because it has stopped them from earning their daily living. That is why they understand what COVID is. It is to them something that is creating more poverty for them. These people have been on lockdown. I'm talking about people in the rural areas. The merchants that buy things on the streets are no longer traveling. What does the farmer that goes to his backyard to harvest and bring things to the road to sell do for living? Now they now begin to hear, why are people no longer traveling? Because of COVID. There is a similarity to them in terms of this health issue and their ability to feed. Those things must be addressed. If you go into Lagos, into rural areas in Lagos, if you go, let's even take Lekki, there is where they call it the mechanic village. There are about 1,000 or 1,200 young able-bodied men and women there that do daily things, all this house building, just day-to-day, taking water to the house, that have been left without a source of feeding, of providing for themselves and their families. And they are beginning to hear COVID. So COVID is not important to them. What is important to them is, how do I feed today? How do I feed my children tomorrow? For me, the government must take a critical look at what this thing is causing. The lockdown in itself is causing to the people at the bottom of the pyramid.
Thank you very much.
My contribution, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Charles, I now hand over to you to deal with all the questions regarding technology. You are there in Africa, and I'll come back to deal with the questions regarding mental health and how people can protect their mental health. So,
thank you so much, Bele, and all the other speakers. Introduce myself again. My name is Charles Otudo. I work with Abstract Nigeria. We deal in the currency of ideas and strategy. So I will just take up, first of all, from my own point of view, has it affected me, my family, and my business? We have a lot of meetings with clients outside Lagos, outside Nigeria. We travel a lot. And most of the time, we function using technology to communicate, except when we have physical one-on-one meetings for negotiations or where there are issues to be addressed. The client says, you as a CEO, you must come. So I travel a lot based on that. But otherwise, technology has been a major backbone for our business. Now, with this incident happening, 3 things happened to us. 1, I shut down the business office officially a week before government shut us down. So we were working from home now remotely for the past 3.5 weeks now. But what else happened to me? I was stuck at the table like this for the past 20-something days. And I understand how everybody feels. But unfortunately, the challenge we have is a myriad. 1, information. With social media, we have so much disinformation and information. There's so much going on in the media, and most of them are half-truths. So how did they affect me? I decided to sieve through that information and be backed up, make sure I get it backed up with facts. So asking the panel, I'm talking to the speakers now, I'm going to start with, let me start with Jane. So Jane, let's talk about the myths and the facts. Some people say 5G comes with coronavirus. Some people say it's a spirit. From your point of view, what's your point of view, Jane, about the myths surrounding the COVID issue? Is it a spirit? Does it come with a 5G? Is it a ghost? Jane, please. From your point of view, Jane. Jane. Hello, Jane.
Let's move to the next person, Jen.
Is Kemi, please?
Okay. There's the 5, technology has been evolving. There's 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and now there's 5G. Now, there's no correlation really between the health and the technology, the 5G. I personally don't see the correlation. The 5G is the fastest. We're moving into the Internet of Things. It is going to give us the ability for the networks to be more accelerated and work faster. The nodes and all of the networks, are going to be connected and are going to move fast and allow us to do phenomenal things. Now, we're talking about, the rays. It's radio transmission, right?
Yes.
If the radio transmission has not affected us, that's ordinary radio, and then the telephones came and it didn't affect us, emails, then we had mobile phones, the ordinary phones, and then we started having, WhatsApp and things like that, and then we're now doing webinars. These are enabled by the technology and the different speeds. Now, because of the continuous use, we are beginning to churn out a lot of data. Now, for us to be able to transact and interconnect things, at the speed of light, we need a faster and more precise technology, which is the advent of the 5G. I'm trying to say it in as granular as I can. And so it has absolutely, countries have rolled out 5G in Asia. MTN has launched 5G in Nigeria, and you can see the difference in the death rates and the cases on the continent of Asia and in the African continent. So there's a total disparity. It's just a myth. It has nothing to do with each other.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me go to Anita. Anita, are you there? Hello, Anita.
Yes, I'm
this
here.
question for Anita. Okay, how has this COVID pandemic affected you and your industry?
We've asked that question, Mr. Charles.
Okay.
Let's move to something else.
Okay. Let's go back to information dissemination now. Now, we are talking about those in the hinterland, how information is not reaching them about what the, how has Okay, from your point of view, do you think the government has handled the dissemination of information properly in terms of information dissemination across beyond the urban areas, the hinterlands? Has government fared enough? And beyond the government, how has the private sector and the private practitioners in the industry, how have they handled this? I mean, if we have so much false information going on, especially with social media, and then these are not being addressed by the mainstream media, how has this affected you and your industry personally? Anita?
Okay, I'm trying to understand a little bit what it is you want to hear from me. So if I think governments done a good job,
Yes.
I think that is very varied throughout the world, right? If I look at it, I mean, if we look on the other side of the ocean, there have been some misquotings from the president of the US. Have governments done enough on communication? I think a lot of them were overwhelmed, and it just laid bare that a lot of the systems are not properly set. Processes are not properly done. If we look at business, if we look at governments, I think that the role of communication and marketing as such are still very, very immature and underestimated. Also in organizations, what you can do from a marketing role, from a communication role. And I hope, of course, I have to preach for my own expertise here, and you know, you're in the same area, so I think that will only play a bigger role going forward because of the fake media, because of the misinformation, because who are the brands you can trust? That
Yes.
basically, because, and that is why I mentioned earlier, for example, in a country like Nigeria, but I think even broader on the whole African continent, a brand, if we can call a pastor, a religious leader, a brand, you know, is a person we as consumers, we trust. So what needs to happen first and foremost, are you a government we can trust? If I look at the Netherlands, our prime minister, he's a bit off and on his trust ratings. His first meeting, his first press meeting was excellent. He had obviously thought this through, had a good speechwriter. He really, a lot of people were very, very, very positive about what he had to say, and that made people change their behavior.
Yeah.
If there's one element I'm really concerned about, and what I don't, yes, there is the 5G. I can't comment on that because I simply don't know enough about it. What I do find is the wearing of masks. You see everywhere popping up, it becomes almost like a fashion statement to wear a mask. Yet, if you listen to WHO, if you listen to the facts, the mask is not going to prevent you from getting COVID-19. And I think what is the concerning part is that it gives people a false sense of security. And then you become, you know, less rigid with distance, less rigid with hand washing. So that's another element of misinformation that I find concerning.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll just throw up a general question now. With being stuck at home, based on isolation, we're all stuck at home. That automatically means that everything goes online, including financial transactions. So we're all relying on the same infrastructure to transact. This also gives room for cyber attacks, and then of course crime online. And then how do we individually ensure that we can prevent, we put in place precautions, especially financial, but the financial part of it, to ensure that all these online frauds do not affect us personally? So I'm going to just throw it up openly to any of you here. Anybody can answer this, please. I've not heard Barbara. Sorry? Hello?
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, so from this point
Hi.
of view, you're stuck. We're all stuck at home. You are talking from the compassion point of view. So we're all stuck at home, everybody. And you know, with this comes all the frustrations. When after being locked down for so long, you have your personal battles you're going through. You're trying to manage your resources, so you're transacting online. And then with this lockdown comes a lot of risks, cyber attacks, and then fraud online. How do we mitigate all this emotionally first? Because one, and then on the other side, the physical actions we should take to prevent becoming victims of online hacking. From your point of view.
Well, it's not my expertise, but I can give you some experience. And I think we're all stuck at home in isolation, and what's important is that we regulate how we feel and that we organize how we're doing. And just in answer to Olayemi's comment just now, how relevant in the pyramid is the mindful approach. So yes, we have all this fear and anxiety, but if you're fearful of where your next food's coming from, that's a different fear as to I'm feeling stressed because I'm getting too much information. So there, I'd like to make that distinction first. And so if you're talking about a compassionate approach to cyber online and possible cybersecurity issues, I would say the only thing I feel is in my sphere of influence is that I can be mindful what I decide to do online. And that when I'm, you know, if I have to do my shopping online, I'll be mindful about what I need and how, and do I really need it? And ask myself an amount of questions before I decide what I do online. I think that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay, let me also come in briefly.
Okay.
Let me come in briefly, you know, because some people we are getting a lot of questions. So I want to ask one or two, three questions before I move back to you. And so I need to read properly. Somebody asked us, Frank Bazaye is asking, given the benefits of working from home, what can be done so the government will encourage companies and organizations to move percentage of their job home? What? Jane, the technology and Terry, what do you say about that?
Well, I don't think the government can force people to move work to home. But I think this is a very good development because for years, especially for women, one of the things we had asked was that women should be able to work from home at certain points in their career, especially when it's like giving birth, they have to spend, time with their kids or take care of a young family. It becomes challenging to stick to your routine of physically being present. So what this has done is made it an acceptable form of working. But I think you can incentivize organizations. I don't think you can force them. I don't think governments can insist on them. But you can create incentives that allow companies, make sure that roles that don't require that rigid. I'm an engineer. To write a code, I don't need to be sitting in front of you in an office to write a script and code and run it. I can run it from anywhere. I just need internet access to log into that server and do it. And it's acceptable. But, culturally, we find it difficult in the workplace down here because your manager wants to see you. If he doesn't see you, he doesn't believe that you're doing the work. So what this has done, make it acceptable that it can be done. So governments can then incentivize companies to follow suit. Give them reasons that if you do have people that have to work from home and their job roles don't require them to be physically present all the time, it could be 2 times in a week, 3 times in a week, only in the mornings. They can then plan, and it will even help the congestion on the infrastructure. Everybody trying to go to work before 8 and all trying to go home at 5. That can also reduce that pressure on our existing infrastructure.
Thank you, Jane. And there's another question from somebody to Yemi. It's saying, since education is fast becoming a virtual online learning system for schools in rural areas, how can this problem be solved? How can the information gap be bridged? And I think I have something to even say there. So I'm talking about the Netherlands where I live. So even though schools are closed, but our children are still in school. They are still learning.
That's right.
They have internet. Even the one that is 8 years old, they are still learning. So I don't know, what is the situation in Africa? Are our children who are home still learning? Otherwise, how can we bridge this gap in terms of technology inequality?
See, this is a real wake-up call for us. Um, when we talk about governments, for the rural areas, it's really the responsibility of the state governments. And I know that a lot of state governments are trying to do some sort of networking for the schools to become, to have internet within the schools. However, now the children are no longer in the schools, they're at home. There are other factors we need to think about when we're talking about this education from home. How many of the public sector or the private sector's parents can actually really afford for their children to work from home online? They have to pay data. They have to they have to look for electricity. They have to. So there are so many other factors that can affect the students from home, and this really now pivots up into what we have been talking about. As a country, I think that this is a real wake-up call, because the importance of energy has come to bear. Because without energy, really, there isn't much a lot of us can do in the rural areas. Even if you put your internet there, you have to be able to charge. If you have to, so many things need to be done. We need to now take self-resilience, self-awareness, and then look at what we need to do in terms of developing our various economies down to the rural areas. OGTV started showing educational programs on television. How many of those children can actually watch television during the time that the program is running? There is the issue of affordability. So that we need to actually deliberately look at a framework that will work for the rural areas. This is really a wake-up call. Not everybody can afford education online. Not everybody can afford the kind of data that we'll require. Not everybody has devices to be able to go online. So, we really need to do, there must be a deliberate act to address this issue.
Before I hand over to Mr. Charles, you want to say something? Go ahead.
I was going to add that something innovative, Yemi, that I also found that there's some radio stations that are actually running online school programs. I mean, programs on air, which I thought was very innovative, because I know...
what is their name, so we can share the information? We want
I think it's Wazobia FM. They have a
Wazobia,
Wazobia FM. They do have on an hourly basis, based on your class, like maths for SS1 to SS2 at SS2. They have it like that. They have a whole calendar of it. If I can find it.
The thing about that, Jane, is that after this, they need to take exams. Then they need to, there must be a structure behind everything, So if it's good for them to go on class. I mean, there's Khan Academy for students in the house. But then after that, they need to be tested. The teachers is another issue. The teachers actually need to be well educated on how to deliver these programs online.
Digitally aware.
And I know that there's Read Manna. Read Manna is doing a lot of training on teacher aware education, in terms of even the ability to use the technology, the applications online.
I know, without mentioning names, but I know that one of the big telco companies is working together with, I believe it's Google. They have Google Classroom and Google Meet, and they want to see if in the next couple of weeks they can push that towards schools. So schools have some kind of online platform they can use to, engage with the students. Because the challenge with the media we talked about, the radio, is one way. It's not a two-way. So only one person gives the information. If the kids don't understand, there is no way to re-engage them. But when we use the online tools, the kids can give feedback, you can clarify. So It's like
Yeah.
a two-way engagement. So let's
Having
see.
having said all this, Jane, the thing is that there might be a next normal for education. You know,
Oh,
schools
yeah.
abroad are not looking for SAT anymore for universities. So there must be a next normal that we begin to develop in terms of education on the continent. We need to start thinking.
Lots of changes. The way we do the assessments, you know, we've been talking about taking most of these assessments online, and this is going to force us to do that because your WIEC, your GT, all those exams,
Yeah.
we'll probably have to make sure these days all of them can be done online, just like SAT is done online.
Are they
Because
necessary? That is the
Well,
question.
that's a
Because
different discussion.
I mean,
It sounds like
Barbara, help me here. Barbara, help me here. If there is a student that has the capability to educate themselves from home and get a degree, does he need SAT?
Ooh, big question. Question.
Food for thought.
I don't have the answer to that. I don't know if they need
Yeah,
of education is going to change with everything that's going online now.
exactly.
You know, for me, I think this is a wake-up call, like all of us have said.
Yeah.
Our
yeah,
nations, our continent needs to wake up to bridge the inequality that we face in trading, in business, in, you know, like competing internationally. We need digital technologies. So if there is something we are crying about, as we are crying for food security, we need to cry for digital transformation. We need to invest. I mean, I heard something like a whole bank sent their employees home and half of them are not working because they don't have laptops, they don't have internet. A bank in Nigeria in today's century, that needs to change and we should fight for that. And so before I hand over, because we're going to bring some people to ask questions, before I hand over to you, Mr. Charles, you know, anything about technology also can bring stress on itself. It can
That's
bring
right. That's
stress.
right.
I want to jump back to Barbara and Anita to ask them some questions that can calm us down. Hope jump back to the technology, you know. That's why I had to mix today's topics. So technology can bring stress on itself. Okay. So I have a question for Barbara. You know, everybody has been saying that, okay, when you get all this negative information, it causes fear, no doubt. But, you know, how can we maintain calm and peace in the face of this pandemic? Some of us are already getting afraid that if this thing continues, we will not have a job. If we don't have a job, we don't have food. I mean, for those who joined us yesterday, you saw how people are crying that some people don't have food to eat. The thought of it that I have only 5,000 naira in my account, how am I going to survive within 2 weeks, is a lot of stress. So we need to be realistic. So Barbara, please, can you tell us, how can we maintain calm and peace in the face of this pandemic? What practical steps would you advise our audience to employ to improve their mental health and their resilience?
Thank you, Iberi. That's a beautiful question. And I think what I just said earlier, regulating your own emotions and organizing yourself is a skill. And it's like a muscle. You need to practice. And a lot of people think maybe if I'm quiet for 1 hour, it's going to bring me some solace. But what's really going to work, and I think some of our panelists have mentioned it a few times, is habit and routine. And the same way we are designing habit and routine around our work, around our daily lives, around this new reality that we have to adapt to, let's try and find a moment in the day where we're quiet in contemplation with ourselves, with our families. It might be prayer, it might be a meditation. It's to bring it back to yourself before coming out and connecting again. And, you know, we don't have time to talk about all the research that goes to show how resilient it can make you if you take that time each day. But these practical steps are the same, or they're similar to washing your hands, keeping 6 feet distance, and using all these practical steps for your physical well-being and not contracting the virus. Similar to that, we have steps that we can take to keep ourselves resilient on the inside. to make sure that we don't get overwhelmed with information. Because I think it was Rick Hansen who said, it's negativity is like Velcro, it sticks to you. And it's so much more difficult to stay positive. It bounces off like Teflon. I think those were his two words. And even I pulled it up just now, the mental health and psychosocial considerations during this outbreak from the World Health Organization can help you. They've got steps, how to be in contemplation, how to help yourself reword what you're thinking. You may be thinking, oh no, I might contract it and die. And instead of saying that, you can say, what can I do to make sure the chances are slimmer for me to contract it? So they have all sorts of steps you can take to build resilience and to make yourself more calm. And I'll be willing to share some email addresses and some websites that you can check out to help yourself and help the people around you stay calm.
Thank you so much. And Anita, just one more question before we move to Charles and to answer people's questions online. How can we maintain our mental well-being? Just one sentence, 2 sentences, just tell us what can we take out from this meeting in terms of our mental health? How can we deal with our mental health? How can we protect it?
Thanks, Vera. I'm not a specialist in any field of mental health, so I can only speak about what helped me. Switch off the news. I haven't no more. That really helped me. And what Barbara also mentioned is do what, change or look at what is in your control, right? What you can't control, you can't change. So that you can't do anything about it. And stressing about that is not going to help. So try to focus on that you can do. The washing hands and everything like that, and switching off the news and when you feel like, okay, try to find a support group, try to be in touch with friends. That is also the other thing, that don't go into isolation.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That is another very important, yeah.
So
talk to people.
We discussed that a lot yesterday, and it says switch off the news. If we switch off the news, we might miss important things. So the technologies, the telephone people, please tell us one sentence to everybody watching. How can we check what you take in and what not to take in? How can we differentiate facts from lies? And where can we get our true source of information to go through this? I mean, it might be more than 2 weeks, Nigerians. I say that I've been here for 1 month, right? So it's gonna be a longer time for you. It may or may not. I'm not prophesying that. So how do people deal with all the news that's coming in? How do they fish out the right one and separate from the wrong one?
One of the easiest way to do this. Okay, just a quick one. One of the easiest way is the source of the information. Unfortunately, one of the fallouts of social media is that everybody can generate content. Everybody is a publisher. Everybody is everybody can generate and share content. But are they valid is the second point. Validity, how do you check validity? Is the source. If your plumber came to your house and told you, oh, you have so many bulbs in your house and that's why you're catching a cold, would you believe the plumber? Does he have the expertise to tell you about the electricity distribution in your house? So that's one way to validate it. The source, do they have the expertise? If somebody's telling you about 5G, are they an expert in technology to tell you about 5G? Just common sense, basic. Then, of course, the second thing is to go for credible news sources. We know the credible mainstream news sources. If you're in doubt, go and check. You go to those main ones,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
News channels and main newspaper.
Okay, so let's go over to Terry, right? Yemi, so.
Terry.
Kerry.
No, I was going to say absolutely the same thing. You need to be. I mean, in the first week, I was always, listening to the news and listening to the news, and then it started getting me worked up. So, like Barbara and Anita have said, I switched off. But then even on the phone, on the WhatsApp phone, you get a lot of communication. You need to have the ability to sieve the source and even look at the content. Does it make sense? Before you even, and try not to forward me text, and except there is a source on it. Just try not to forward it. If you get a WhatsApp message and there's no source, there's no point in forwarding it to somebody else, because it might as well be a rumor. So just try and filter as much as possible. Even if it's your trusted friend, you ask, where did you get this from? Do you know the person that originated this? So that does he know the person in government? So you need to continue asking questions for you to be able to sieve out the false information from the real ones.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Charles. You can take over from the Q&A box. We have a lot of questions, about 6, and we're also looking at our time. So I will appeal to our panelists. When you're answering, make it get to the point so that we can cover as many questions as possible. And for those who we don't answer your questions, please, we will send you an email. Also, if you want to ask questions live or contribute at the end, I'll call you up on the screen to share your opinion if you stay till the end. So Mr. Charles, you can take over from the Q&A box and you see some of the questions there. Is he still there?
Yes, I am. I'm here. I'm trying to look into one of the questions that came in was, now, this is a general one. Somebody asked, no name on it. It says, with everybody going online now, even the hackers are targeting not just businesses, but also individuals that try to download information on the COVID-19. They're also being attacked. So this question, I want to target at Kerry Yemi. How do we mitigate against this? Beyond looking at the source of this information, don't forget everybody's under pressure to get information about the COVID updates. So if you see an update that comes into your inbox, you click on it. So the fraudsters are also using the COVID-19 information to also attack unsuspecting individuals. So how do we protect ourselves? How do individuals protect themselves beyond looking at the source? If you are desperate for information, you click on download. How do we protect ourselves against this type of fraud hackers?
The first thing is, don't even click and download.
Don't click and download.
Don't click and download.
Wow.
If you don't know the source, don't click and download.
Don't
don't respond to text, emails, or calls about you have to check. We have to, at this point in time, be very intuitive. Ignore online offers for certain things and people that are talking about bringing kids to your homes. There's so many things going on. Robocalls that come in and start to talk robo. Just hang up. There's no need to, you have to be really very intuitive. You have to verify the response. You have to Google, all of these things. A lot of hackers are, this is really their max time. And so you have to do your homework when it comes to, in fact, donations. You have to, call the person that sent you an email and find out if the person is the same person and what they're saying. So you have to be very, very intuitive at this point in time. It's not business as usual. This is like, let's say, the new normal in sieving out information. So you have to be really very intuitive.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Charles, click on the Q&A box. There are so many questions regarding telecommunication.
One more. I just got one question now. This is for a friend from Avanti. Now, with the post-COVID-19, how do we ensure that government enables this sector, information and technology, because broadband and the cost of setting this up to business are expensive. How do we ensure that it becomes affordable? We're talking about those in the rural areas, they don't have access to internet. So that also limits the impact of government's information going that way. So how does government, how would government come in to ensure that provision of broadband across all all the strata of the economy and the socio-economic dynamics come as low as possible to be affordable? How would that happen? Is it based on policies, or is it based on a pressure groups, or is it based on a white paper from a group like this? So from your point of view, how do we ensure that government looks into this sector to ensure that it becomes cheaper? Because there will be other pandemics in future. We don't pray for it, but when it happens, this is an example. If it happens next time, how do we ensure that those people at the hinterlands get information on time in terms of protecting themselves from the negatives of the same pandemic? How do we do that?
Okay, I was actually typing a response to someone that asked that
okay.
question. So I belong to a body called the Alliance for Affordable Internet. So it's a body, it's a subcommittee. Alliance for Affordable. I just put the website for him. It's the subcommittee of the World Wide Web. And the target is that people, especially in Africa, should not spend more than 2% of their gross earnings on affordable internet for 1 gig at least. You shouldn't spend more than 2% of your gross earnings. But how can the governments do it? There's so many ways, and the report actually listed. One is infrastructure. We don't have the infrastructure, and the government needs to invest. A huge gap. There is no fiber. If there were fiber, we probably would have broadband in those rural areas. And one of the easier ways for the governments to do it is to do public-private partnership. Right of way is one of the big things we've all been talking about. You cannot expect private companies to pay ridiculous fees for right of ways, and they don't have a business case to go to the rural areas. They wouldn't go. It's either you subsidize it or you take those fees away. Some other things we're also talking about is policies in terms of regulatory policies. If the regulatory policies do not support the industry will shy away from going to areas where there's no business case. And we see that a lot in Africa. You know, if people get heavily fined for every tiny little, miss them, they will shy away from investing. And we see that in the second. There are other things, listed. There is a whole huge report about it. But there's so much work to be done. We haven't even scratched the surface. And until we do that, the government has to be deliberate in terms of their digital strategy. You kind of the government normally drives the strategy for the private sector. The government decides that a key focus is the rural areas, and you incentivize the private sector, they will go there. They're not going there today because for them, there's no money to be made. So there has to be another incentive for them to go there. And that's one of the ways to address that. So that's just some of the ways we can address that gap.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now, going back to religion, recently I saw live one of the most recognizable faces in the religious sector preaching about 5G and the negativism of 5G. I was shocked. I couldn't believe that a man of such caliber that is educated could preach about 5G and the negativism of 5G. Now, that takes me back to the issue of using religious leaders as influencers. Now, if religious leaders that we trust are not informed and are making uninformed statements about stuff that it's so obvious, there's no relationship between 5G and the COVID-19. There's none whatsoever. So if a religious leader that is up there will make such a mistake, and not privately on all his platforms, how do we ensure that from the private sector itself, as a pressure group, and then with government, ensuring that if we want to use these religious leaders, the content of everything that goes out there must be vetted? How do we ensure this is executed? To ensure that every information that is disseminated via any platform has a certification in terms of the content, the veracity, and the quality of same. How do we ensure that?
Well, that's a thing, because there's also the freedom of speech. But I think what is important is that the government should actually call people to order when they step out of line. And I think something like that was done. I don't have any formal communication, but I think something like that was done. But what we know is that if one way to do it, when someone that's not an expert in a field misinforms, he's a symbolic leader, so rationality is thrown out of the window. One way to address it is to go and inform that person, and probably when you do that, they could also use that platform to re-educate their subjects or their followers. So that's one good way. That's one of the things we have learned from this, is that government, policymakers, civil society, we need to invest in disseminating the right information. We need to use those same tools and inform the people. The same social media, the same traditional media, we need to go and educate people. What is 5G? What does technology mean? Because it's so funny, because one of the greatest outcomes of what has happened is the fact that technology has bridged the gap. For most churches, all Sunday services were held online. And it was technology. There was no technology. Nobody would even have any Sunday service. They would have to stay at home. So that is one of the, that's one of the positives. We should actually, push that information out there. We should educate people to see how this is a benefit, how this is a tool, and how we can use the tool. There's so much we can do with the tool. We're talking about 5G. What does 5G bring?
Okay, Jen, you're breaking.
Just faster speed. Oh, I'm breaking up. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're breaking. And
she needs 5G.
We need to respect people's time. Jen, we need to respect people's time. I want to thank everybody for your contributions, and I want to each of the panelists to please just one line of sentence. Somebody just wrote on the chat, which is very touching. He said, "Thank you for your stories on how you're dealing with your mental health."
Wow.
And it has helped him a lot to know how to deal with this. So our stories matter. If you live here today, your role is not to be probably looking at the government. Your role is to ask yourself, what can I do to be the distributor of the right information? What can I do to help my neighbor? What can I do? Because if there is one time our leaders don't know the answers, it is now. If there is one time our government officials don't know the answers, it is now. COVID-19 is real. It is, it's so tricky. Nobody can tell you, I can solve it. You see what is happening in the Western world. They are scrambling for information. In this meeting today, some people have joined us to even see what we're discussing that they can use to contribute to what they are already doing in their policies. And we promised the people here yesterday that our subsequent meetings, we are going to be bringing in government officials, policymakers. It's going to show you that they don't have the answers. They depend on us. So whatever information we have that can save lives, please share it. Be the carrier of positive information, something that can help people survive. Feed your neighbor, share what you have. This is not a time to be looking and pointing at government. And we should also hold our corporate institutions accountable. All the companies in Nigeria, how much are they bringing now to solve problems? Hold them accountable. Everybody that needs to help in this period, our communities, let's be our brothers' keepers. That's my own point of view, and this is my message to you as you leave this place. Know that you can be the change you want to see. Educate yourself, educate your family, educate your community. This is how knowledge disseminates. And then I want to say that you please remember to join us today, especially if you have a small business and you're struggling, you don't know how to make money anymore. Please join us, because we'll be talking about how you can also use digital transformation to scale your business even at this time. Also, if you're afraid of your career continuity, resilience, please also join us at 4. Make sure you register for it and join. And before I go off, I want to start from Barbara, Anita. I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to Jane. Thank you to Charles. Thank you to Kerry. It's been an honor to have you. But before you sign off, please give some positive message to everybody watching us now. What should they take out of here? What should they continue doing when they leave? Thank you so much for sharing.
Jane.
Afra, let's start from you.
Okay.
Me?
Yeah, let's start from you. A positive word.
Positive word. So in everything that's going on, there's always a space for your response. Between what's going on and your response, there's a space where you have the power to decide, to be mindful, to be compassionate. That's what I'd like to say.
Thank you. So
Awesome.
let's go, Anita.
Awesome.
Yeah, when 2020 started, to me, that was the decade of partnerships. And I think if there's anything that comes out of this, from a broader and from a very small perspective, it is partnerships. It is public-private partnerships. It is partnerships between governments and church leaders. It is partnerships between governments and Nollywood in this case. We all need each other. That's my message.
Thank you very much.
We all need each other.
And Jane, can we move over to you?
Okay, I think what I would say is that in anything, I think what you should think about, my last word is think of how you can use your technology for good. How can you use your internet, your SMS, your social media to push positive information, message that can encourage others and support them? Just think of how you can use it for good.
Thank you very much. And Kerry?
And for me, it's just to say that it's a difficult time for a lot of people. So try and get yourself in the routine, be mindful of your hygiene, stay safe and stay sane.
Stay safe and stay sane.
Charles?
In the midst of all this, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Stay positive, stay in your lane, and remember, it is just a phase and we're going to go through it. At the end of the tunnel, there's always light. Stay positive.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. We've enjoyed hanging out with you today. And thank God for technology. We can still connect with everyone. And I hope to see you at 4 p.m. today. We will send this video later by next week. And we will also inform you of the next webinar, which is in 2 weeks, where we're trying to bring government officials and policymakers from United Nations, AU, and our state government to please come and tell us what they are doing and how we can support them. So thank you so much, and bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.